They had hospitals, hotels, banks, movie theaters. They built it all from nothing after slavery. And then, one night, America burned it to the ground. Not once, not twice, but over and over and over again. And then erased it from every history book. This is that story. It is 1906. The land is Indian Territory, present-day Tulsa, Oklahoma. A black entrepreneur named O.W. Gurley purchases land and begins selling lots exclusively to black buyers. Others arrive. Some were formerly enslaved. Some are their children. All of them are building from absolute zero. Within 2 decades, the Greenwood district of Tulsa becomes the wealthiest black community in the United States. 2 newspapers, 2 movie theaters, a hospital, a public library, hotels, law offices, dental clinics, a 54-room luxury hotel built by a black man named John Stratford. Segregation, ironically, created a captive marketplace. Black entrepreneurs prospered. Some earned salaries exceeding those of white-collar workers across town. When Booker T. Washington visited in 1905, he gave this place a name that would echo through history. He called it the Negro Wall Street. Today we know it as Black Wall Street. Here is the economic genius behind it. A black dollar spent at a black business would circulate within the community dozens of times before leaving. Every purchase built another family. Every transaction funded another business. Black professionals, doctors, dentists, lawyers, clergy, all served the community. Residents selected their own leaders and raised their own capital. They had created a nation within a nation, and that terrified people who believed black Americans were supposed to stay poor. May 30th, 1921, Memorial Day. A 19-year-old black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland needs to use a restroom. The only one available to him, because of segregation, is on an upper floor of the Drexel Building downtown. To get there, he rides an elevator operated by a 17-year-old white girl named Sarah Page. The most common account of what followed is that Rowland accidentally stepped on Page's foot, throwing her off balance. When he reached out to keep her from falling, she screamed. Many Tulsans came to believe through media reports that Rowland had attacked Page, although no sufficient evidence surfaced to substantiate the claim. The next morning, Rowland was arrested. And then a newspaper ran this headline. Within hours, white men gathered outside the courthouse where Rowland was held, talking openly about lynching him. Black residents of Greenwood, many of them World War I veterans, armed themselves and went to the courthouse, not to cause trouble, to make sure Dick Rowland was not dragged into the street and killed. Shots were fired. No one knows who fired first. But here is what you must understand. Sociologists who later studied the massacre concluded it was fueled by whites' perception that black Americans were economically out of line, that their prosperity was a direct challenge to white supremacy, and that they needed to be put back in their place. Dick Rowland was the excuse. Greenwood was always the target. June 1st, 1921. Early morning hours. Biplanes dropped fiery turpentine bombs from the night skies onto rooftops. The first aerial bombing of an American city in American history. A furious mob of thousands of white men then surged into black homes, killing, destroying, and stealing everything. Arsonists waited for white women to fill bags with looted goods before setting homes on fire. Women were chased from their homes, some with babies in their arms, as volleys of shots were fired at them. An American city, bombed from the air, by Americans, against American citizens. In 24 hours, it was over. More than 1,400 homes and businesses burned. Nearly 10,000 people left homeless. Between 30 and 300 people dead, most of them black. The Stratford Hotel, gone. The theaters, the hospital, the schools, the newspapers, gone. All of it, in one night. The Red Cross report on the death toll read simply, "Figures are omitted. No one knows. Then came the cover-up. The Tulsa Tribune removed its front-page story from its bound volumes. Police and state militia archives went missing. For decades, there were no memorials, no ceremonies, and no justice. Only a deliberate effort to erase what happened. Survivors filed riot-related claims against the city valued at over $1.8 million. Almost all were denied. One exception, a white business owner was compensated for guns taken from his shop. Not one person was prosecuted. Not one. If Tulsa were an isolated tragedy, it would still be devastating. But it was not isolated. It was a pattern. A nationwide, decades-long war on black prosperity, hidden in plain sight. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. Wilmington was a thriving, majority black city with black elected officials and successful black-owned businesses. In 1898, white supremacists orchestrated a violent coup. Elaine, Arkansas, 1919. The Elaine Massacre began when black sharecroppers dared to organize a union. For the crime of asking to be paid fairly, white mobs descended. Most Americans have never heard of it. Rosewood, Florida, January 1st, 1923. Rosewood was a self-sufficient, prosperous community. Then white mobs descended for days. They shot residents, set buildings ablaze, and razed the entire town. Rosewood was literally erased from the map. In the red summer of 1919 alone, racial mob violence erupted in 23 cities across America. The same story, the same trigger. As one historian put it, when we showed we were prosperous, people burned down our stores. If all of this happened, documented, witnessed, recorded, why didn't you know about it? Why didn't your school teach it? Because the erasure was not accidental. It was engineered. The Tulsa Race Massacre was rarely mentioned in history books, taught in schools, or even talked about for decades. It only became part of Oklahoma's school curriculum in 2020, 99 years after it happened. The destruction of Rosewood was largely ignored until 1982, when a newspaper reporter wrote a series of articles about its history. The Elaine Massacre is barely known even today. Think about what that silence costs. Every generation of black Americans who grew up not knowing what was taken from them. Every generation of all Americans who grew up believing that this country rewarded hard work equally for everyone, regardless of race. That mythology was built on mass graves. But here is what the mob could not destroy. Black Tulsans salvaged what they could and began to rebuild, with no government aid, no insurance payouts, and no apology. The Red Cross supplied lumber, but no labor. Residents built their own homes back with their own hands. They rebuilt, because that is what black Americans have always done when America burned what they built. In May 2021, 100 years after the massacre, a woman named Viola Fletcher sat before the United States Congress. She was 107 years old. She had been 6 years old when the fires came. She told Congress, "I went to bed in my family's home on May 31st, 1921. I have never forgotten." A 107-year-old woman, still waiting for her country to reckon with what was done. The city of Tulsa has never paid reparations. The Elaine and Wilmington victims, largely uncompensated and unacknowledged to this day. They never taught you this history because it raises too many uncomfortable questions. Questions like, what would black America look like today if Greenwood had been allowed to grow? Questions like, how many other Greenwoods were there that we never even found out about? These are not questions about the past. These are questions about right now. Because you cannot understand where we are until you understand what was taken. And you cannot understand what was taken until you know the truth of what was built. Black Wall Street was not a miracle. It was what happens when black people are simply left alone to build. They burned the buildings, but they could not burn the blueprint. They came for the buildings. The buildings are gone, but you are here, and now you know.